Hello, this is Jonathan Green. I'm here for the FTT 217 Week 3 assignment. Today is September 21st, 2025. For this assignment, we had to select 3 parts and get some critical dimensions on them. For my 3 parts, I chose 2 parts off the bolt carrier group, which is the extractor, and then the firing pin, if you can see it in there. I did disassemble this and take the measurements for all that. I just reassembled it so it's easier to kind of keep together. And then the hammer. I got the dimensions off of the hammer as well. So for the hammer, that was my first one that I measured. I had a length, I used my micrometer for this as well. So my length was about 49.27 millimeters. Width was about 23.7 millimeters. And height, so it laying down and up, was about 7.71 millimeters. For the firing pin, my length was 100.06 millimeters, so it was kind of very long, obviously. My width was 8.70 millimeters, and height was also 8.70 millimeters. Now that was measured at there's several points throughout the firing pin. I measured it at the widest point. So widest and tallest was the same point, about 8.70 millimeters. Extractor, not the entire bolt carrier group itself, just specifically the extractor right here. I actually took the pin out of this and did all my measurements and stuff, and then put it back. The length was 34.5 millimeters. The width was 7.92 millimeters, and height was 6.43 millimeters, measured at the widest point again. So that was on the back of the extractor where the extractor spring was at. For faults that can result because of these parts malfunctioning or improper modification, for both the hammer and firing pin, it's a failure to fire. So if the hammer gets damaged or is modified incorrectly, it can fail to strike the firing pin, which would result in a fail to fire. Same thing for the firing pin. So if the firing pin gets modified or damaged, it would not be able to slide through the bolt carrier group, hit the striker, and set off the round, again resulting in a failure to fire. For extractor, just like the name says, if it faults because of malfunction or improper modification, it will fail to extract a round. With the extractors specifically, on parts I'm looking for would be like, because the next part would be what damages or something like that would you expect to see. For the extractor face itself, if you can see it, there's a little tiny lip right there. I would expect either that lip to be worn down, or I would expect to see like the spring in the back has snapped or worn out, or the extractor retaining pin, the little pin that goes in through the bolt, maybe it broke and somehow came loose. That would be the only real damage I would expect to see that. For firing pin, I would expect to see either the point on the end that goes into the primer or hits the primer and sets it off. I expect that to be worn down. I mean, it's a very precise measurement, so I would expect that to be worn down, or the actual firing pin itself snaps. I've seen both, specifically more so that the firing pin wears down, but I have seen snapped firing pins before, so it does happen. And then with the hammer, I would expect to see maybe the hammer's worn down. Not so much the hammer. I would expect to see more of like the springs, the hammer springs worn down, or the sear that catches worn down as well. Not so much damage on the hammer. As for what gunsmiths can do for specialized training for this, maybe they can attend an AR specific class go through the parts, look at them, get the measurements beforehand, kind of get a reference for what things should be. That way, I mean, obviously different makers and stuff, they have slightly different tolerances, but generally speaking, they should be the same tolerance. So get like a good idea of what like an AR-15 firing pin or an AR-10 firing pin, like the different lengths and stuff like that. A general idea, and then when you get an AR-N in the future, you can be like, oh, okay, this one's like slightly longer or shorter than the previous one, so this one has an issue. And then for the final prompt, which was another part that these parts interact with, and its critical measurements, I actually measured the bolt itself. So because the bolt actually interacts with all three of these parts, so I figured it would be a good kind of linking point. So the bolt is actually the starred part right here, and its critical measurements are length. It was 74.59 millimeters long. Width and height, again, similar to the firing pin, it's a rounded part, so at the widest it's also going to be its tallest. So I used the same measurement for that, which is 22.70 for both. That should cover both length and width and height.